The first thing I noticed wasn't the silence in the car. It was how loud my thoughts had become. They pressed against the inside of my skull, sharp and restless, replaying every mistake I'd made during the test, every stalled turn, every shaky merge, every second where I'd felt my confidence slip through my fingers like sand. I kept my eyes fixed on the dark road ahead, lit only by the dull glow of street lights and the soft hum of the engine beneath us. I didn't need him to say it. I already knew. I had failed. "Hey," Mr. Callahan said gently from the driver's seat, his voice cutting through the noise in my head without raising itself. "You're awfully quiet back there." I swallowed hard, staring at my hands in my lap. They still felt like they were gripping the steering wheel, tense and unsure. "I messed it up," I muttered. I knew I would. He didn't respond right away. That was one thing about him. I'd noticed it from the first lesson. He never rushed to fill silence. He let it sit, let it breathe, like it had something important to say on its own. "You didn't mess it up," he said finally. "You had a tough test. That's different." I let out a humorless laugh. "Pretty sure the result's the same." He glanced at me briefly through the rearview mirror, his eyes calm, steady. Not disappointed, not annoyed, just present. "Where to?" he asked. I hesitated. "Home," I said. "I'll just go home." But even as I said it, something twisted in my chest. Home didn't feel like a place tonight. It felt like a reminder of expectations, of questions I didn't want to answer, of the look my dad would give me when I told him I hadn't passed. Not angry, not even loud. Just disappointed in that quiet, heavy way that stuck with you. Mr. Callahan must have noticed the hesitation. "Everything okay there?" he asked. "Yeah," I said quickly. Too quickly. "Just tired." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't quite believe me. Still, he didn't push. Instead, he turned onto a different street than the one leading to my neighborhood. I frowned, leaning forward slightly. That's not the way." "I know," he said calmly. "Thought we'd take a little detour first. If that's all right." I blinked. "A detour?" He smiled faintly. "You trust me?" I hesitated. Then, for reasons I couldn't fully explain, I nodded. "Yeah, I guess I do." "Good," he said. We drove in silence for a few minutes, the city slowly changing around us. The neat suburban streets gave way to older buildings, dimmer lights, and a kind of quiet that felt heavier than before. Not peaceful, just tired. Eventually, he pulled over near a small convenience store, its flickering sign barely holding on to life. "Come on," he said, unbuckling his seatbelt. I frowned again. "What are we doing?" "You'll see." Reluctantly, I followed him out of the car. The night air was colder than I expected, biting at my skin as I shoved my hands into my hoodie pockets. Inside the store, he grabbed a couple of paper bags and filled them quickly. Sandwiches, bottled water, a few snacks. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just simple. I watched, confused. When we stepped back outside, he didn't head toward the car. Instead, he started walking down the sidewalk. "Mr. Callahan?" I called after him. "What's going on?" "Walk with me," he said. So I did. A block later, I understood. There was a man sitting against the side of a building, wrapped in a thin blanket that looked like it had seen better days. His head was down, his hands tucked close to his chest, like he was trying to hold on to whatever warmth he could find. Mr. Callahan approached him slowly. "Evening, Joe," he said, his voice warm and familiar. The man looked up, his tired eyes lighting up just a little. "Well, I'll be Callahan." They exchanged a small smile, the kind that didn't need many words. Mr. Callahan handed him one of the bags. "Got you something." Joe took it carefully, like it was something fragile. "You didn't have to." "I know," Mr. Callahan said. "But I wanted to." I stood there, frozen, unsure of what to do or where to look. After a brief conversation, nothing dramatic, just simple, human. Mr. Callahan gave a small nod and turned back toward me. We walked on. "Who was that?" I asked quietly. "An old friend," he said. I frowned. "You do this a lot?" "Sometimes." "That's it?" "Sometimes?" He shrugged lightly. "When I can." We kept walking, and before I knew it, we'd stopped again. Another person. Another quiet exchange. Another bag handed over with the same gentle respect. No pity, no speeches. Just kindness. By the third stop, something inside me had shifted. The weight in my chest wasn't gone, but it had changed. It felt smaller somehow, less like the end of the world. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked as we headed back toward the car. He didn't answer right away. "Because," he said finally, "you think today was a failure." I looked away. "It was." "No," he said softly. "It was a moment. That's all. One moment in a very long life." I didn't respond. "You know," he continued, "I had a student once who failed 3 times before passing. Thought his life was over each time. What happened to him?" I asked. Mr. Callahan smiled faintly. "He's doing just fine. Got a good job, a family. Still can't parallel park worth a damn, but he gets by." I let out a small laugh despite myself. "Point is," he said, stopping beside the car, "what you do after a moment like this matters a whole lot more than the moment itself." I leaned against the door, thinking. "And what am I supposed to do?" I asked. He met my gaze, his expression steady. "You keep going," he said. "You learn, you grow, and you remember that your worth isn't measured by a test, score, or a piece of paper." I swallowed, something tightening in my throat. "And if that's hard to believe," he added, "you find ways to remind yourself. Like helping someone who's having a worse day than you." I glanced back down the street, where Joe was still sitting, now carefully unwrapping his sandwich. For the first time that night, my failure didn't feel like the biggest thing in the world. We got back into the car, and this time, when he asked where to, I gave him my address without hesitation. The drive was quieter, but it felt different, lighter. When we pulled up outside my house, I hesitated before opening the door. "Mr. Callahan?" I said. "Yeah? Thanks." He nodded. "Any time." I stepped out, then paused. "Hey, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why do you do this? The helping." He leaned back slightly in his seat, considering. "Because someone did it for me once," he said simply. "On a night I really needed it." I nodded slowly. "Guess it stuck with you," I said. He smiled. "Yeah, it did." I closed the door and stood there for a moment, watching as his car disappeared down the street. Then I turned toward my house. The porch light was on. My dad was probably inside waiting. There would be questions, maybe disappointment, maybe silence. But for the first time, I didn't feel like running from it. I took a deep breath and walked inside. That night, I told him the truth. Yeah, I failed. Yeah, it sucked. But it wasn't the end. And somewhere between the embarrassment, the honesty, and the quiet understanding that followed, something inside me changed. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic movie-like way, but enough. Enough to stand a little straighter. Enough to understand that being a man wasn't about getting everything right the first time. It was about what you did when you didn't. It was about showing up, owning your mistakes, choosing kindness when it would be easier not to. That night, I didn't pass my driving test, but I learned how to move forward, and somehow that mattered more